My TNA Lockdown 2014 pay-per-view review. The pay-per-view saw there a little while ago. As far as my thoughts on this show, overall, it wasn't a terrible show from TNA, but it was plagued by one bad booking decision. Now, going into the show, I was not expecting Samoa Joe to win the TNA title. I don't think anyone was expecting him to walk out as TNA World Heavyweight Champion, especially how strong he was booked to lead in here and having the advantage against Magnus leading into the go-home show for this pay-per-view. So I don't think many of us were expecting Joe to win, but a lot of us were hoping maybe TNA will do the smart move. Joe's very hot right now. The crowd's finally back into him. You've built him up very strong, made him seem like, he's the Joe of old. But TNA doesn't do that. They do some idiotic Russo ending to the TNA World Heavyweight title with Abyss getting involved, helping Magnus. So I guess now Abyss is basically Dixie's paid stooge. What a waste of time using Abyss. That's all he's going to be used for now, and just a terrible ending for the World Heavyweight title match. I mean, that type of ending you can get away with on free TV. And let's say if TNA was doing monthly pay-per-views, meaning a pay-per-view every month, you could probably get away with that if this was like a B-level show. But TNA only has, like 3 or 4 actual pay-per-views, not, pay-per-views they claim that are, pay-per-views that are just episodes of Impact, but they only have 3 or 4 pay-per-views a year that they actually expect fans to actually go out their way and pay for. And this is not a type of ending where you can afford to do that on a show where you're expecting fans to pay, I think, at least $40 or $45 for your pay-per-view. I mean, fans aren't going to buy your pay-per-views if you do that type of ending on here. I understand, the idea of Magnus as, this coward heel and stuff, and that works and stuff. And I actually don't mind. I don't mind Magnus as champ, but you could have done a better bullshit ending with him retaining the title in some other cheap fashion than the idiotic, Abyss coming out from under the ring, pulling Joe under the ring, then coming out there hitting the black hole slam, then Magnus choking him out, and that was the end of that. Then the main event, the Lethal Lockdown match, which was actually a good match. It was a good main event. It was kind of tame for, a Lethal Lockdown match. We've seen a lot of other crazy stuff happen in there, but you still saw some good action in there. And it was, the right side did go over with Team MVP winning. Obviously, after the world title, you had to have the baby faces go over in the main event. But in the fashion they went over was just one of the worst ways you can do it. I mean, okay, Dixie Carter says she's got this insurance policy that's going to guarantee her side to win. So she has Bully Ray come out, be the special guest referee. Obviously, looks like he's going to do her bidding. Then he ends up turning on her, attacks and slams Bobby Roode. Then MVP hits the Yakuza kick, and MVP's side wins. So basically, the baby faces had to win pretty much in a heelish fashion, and they needed the help of an older plus 40-year-old to actually win the match. I mean, that doesn't send good signals when you do that as the main event, then you do a bullshit ending for your main event. Fans are just going to say, this is the same old shit we've been seeing for years with TNA, that we've seen. They have great talent in their company, but they do terrible booking decisions, and that was what kind of plagued this show. I mean, you saw some good wrestling on here, but the booking decision with the title match, and then kind of having where the babyfaces kind of had to win in a heelish fashion with, a 40-year-old guy, a plus 40-year-old, and Bully Ray basically having to help them win. I mean, that was an idiotic decision right there to do it like that. They should have had MVP's team. Obviously, was the right decision to have them go over, but I wish they would have done something different with the ending. But let me get into my review before I ramble on way too long. The opening matchup was the Bad Influence, Christopher Daniels and Kazarian, and Chris Sabin teaming up to take on the Great Muta, Sanada, and Yasu. And this was a good, solid opener. I mean, I'm glad that TNA has this working agreement with Wrestle One. Now, if TNA didn't screw their relationship up with New Japan, we could see even more awesome talent from Japan if they didn't screw their New Japan relationship up. But at least we're going to be seeing Sanada inside of TNA. He is one of the best talents that Wrestle One has. and he is the current X Division champion, which he beat Austin Aries over in Tokyo, Japan recently at the Wrestle One / TNA show that they did at the beginning of March. So Sanada is going to be working in TNA. Obviously, always great to see Muta. I'm a huge Muta mark. I mean, obviously he's well past his prime, but TNA used him in the way that he should have been used, in a 6-man tag where he didn't do too much. He was in there with guys he's worked before, Christopher Daniels and Chris Sabin, so he's familiar with who he's taking on. Daniels and him did some good stuff. Muta got in his offense. Sanada was showcased very well in this match. Yasu was more or less a talent that was added at the last second, because this match, they've made 3 different changes in the last couple days. I mean, at first, instead of, Yasu being their third partner, it was originally going to be Tigre Uno. Then they had another participant as well. Then they, I guess, finally settled with having Yasu be the third guy. When you saw Yasu and Kaz in the ring with each other, you saw a little, taste of the strong style, Japanese style between them two. So this was a good opener, and the really good ending of the match, where you saw a great Muta. He spit the mist in the eyes of Kaz. Hit the Shining Wizard on Christopher Daniels. Then Sanada went to the top, hit a moonsault, and picked up the win for his side. So the Muta got, showcased the way he should have been showcased, kind of like hiding his flaws at his age right now. Sanada got showcased well, and Yasu was just there. He wasn't much of anything, but they did do a good job of showcasing Sanada in this match. Good solid opener, 3 1/4 stars. Then the next matchup was Samuel Shaw versus Mr. Anderson. Now, what I gotta say with this match, wrestling-wise, this match wasn't that good of a match, which was expected. But I do gotta say, this was probably one of the best booked matches of the night. And what I gotta say with it, and people are gonna look at the star rating and see that this is my least favorite match star rating wise, because I only probably give it 2 stars as far as match quality, but booking wise, it was great. I loved the booking in this match. I mean, the Sam Shaw character, at first I thought it was a little too over the top and idiotic, but then I've grown to somewhat love it. I mean, you got this creepy little bastard, that's, has this obsession with Christy Hemming. I mean, you have him going on, basically borderline rapist / stalker gimmick with this character, and just, his whole obsession with Christy Hemming. I mean, he plays this character great. You had him come out first, and he was looking for Christy Hemming. Christy Hemming wasn't out there, and then he got on top of the cage, basically almost said he was going to commit suicide by saying, "I'm going to end this if Christy Hemming doesn't come out." Then Anderson came out there. Anderson did stuff on the mic against him. Then the match starts. Like I said, match-wise, it wasn't that great, but I thought it was booked very well. You saw a ref bump in here where Earl Hebner was about to open the cage. He took a bump. I think it was because Samuel Shaw slammed Anderson at the cage. Earl Hebner took a fall to the floor, and this plays into the end of the match. You actually see Mr. Anderson get out of the cage, hit the floor. Christy Hemming celebrating. She finally came out there, was cheering him, was celebrating him, looking like he won this match, but Earl Hebner was still out here, so it wasn't no decision made that he actually won this match. And then Christy Hemming was celebrating, thinking that he won. She was close to like the hole of the cage. Samuel Shaw pulled her in, and then for a brief minute or two, Samuel Shaw had Christy Hemming all to himself, locked inside the cage. Then Anderson came in there, made the save for Christy Hemming, and then you saw Samuel Shaw use his choke submission to choke out Anderson, then walk out the cage. Earl Hebner's revived, sees Samuel Shaw escaping the cage, and it declares him the victor. So that was great booking right there. I thought that was an awesome job right there, booking-wise right there, because you had him win in the most heelish fashion. He got a hold of Christy Hemming in the match. Anderson still looked like, the knight in shining armor, but it was booked very well. I mean, that's like the biggest praise I can give of the night was this match for booking-wise. So, like I said, I only give it 2 stars match quality-wise, but I thought it was booked very well. Then the next matchup, well, we were originally going to be getting Ethan Carter III versus Kurt Angle in a steel cage match. This obviously didn't take place. Kurt Angle couldn't appear. He wasn't able to wrestle here. Ethan Carter III makes an open challenge. Bobby Lashley accepts it. Or Ethan Carter III says, "You're not a contractual star with this company. I was challenging anyone on the roster. So then you just see Bobby Lashley basically attack Ethan Carter III, hit the body slam, then spears Ethan Carter III. Nice little segment there, I mean, where they had, you know, a nice surprise there with Bobby Lashley appearing in TNA, returning to TNA. Hopefully this time in his TNA career, Bobby Lashley does a little better than the last time. They really didn't use him that well last time. Hopefully this time they do a little better. Then the next matchup was Magnus versus Tigre Uno. Mantic, not Magnus. Manik versus Tigre Uno. And this was, you know, felt like an old school, you know, X Division style match. The one thing that obviously did hurt this match was obviously with all the matches of the whole entire night being contested inside of a steel cage, you obviously couldn't have these two perform an awesome match like they probably could have if the cage wasn't involved. So they kind of had to play within that element, and they still did some really good stuff. I mean, I loved, you know, the split-legged moonsault into the Hurricane Rana that Tigre Uno did. He's definitely a good talent. I've seen him before in AAA as Extreme Tiger, and this is a good addition for the X Division. I mean, with Sanada being the current X Division champion and Tigre Uno and these new fresh faces they're bringing in for the X Division, they're definitely trying to revitalize the X Division, and these type of stars seem like they possibly could do that, and Tigre Uno did pick up the win after he hit the saber-tooth splash, basically a Phoenix splash to Mantic to pick up the victory. 3 and 1 4-star match. Good, solid X Division style match, and obviously would have been probably better if they didn't have the cage involved. So I'd like to see these two take on each other again without the element of having for them to deal with in the cage. The next matchup was the last man standing match with James Storm and James Storm versus Gunner. This was a good last man standing match, not a great last man standing match. They did what they should have done at the beginning. They brawled at the stage, went around the ring before they actually got inside of the cage. They did do some good spots within this match, some brutal chair spots. It was not as brutal as I was expecting it to be. I was expecting maybe some blood in here, but I don't mind when wrestlers don't do that. I mean, in this day and age with wrestling, I mean, you don't necessarily need to have a bloodbath to have a great last man standing match. They did some good stuff in here, you know, brutal chair shots. And then the match ends with, which I thought the ending wasn't great, but it made sense. The ending made perfect sense. You had Gunner hit a superplex to James Storm. James Storm placed 2 chairs side by side. He got superplexed through those chairs. He couldn't answer the 10 count, and the way Gunner got up, he basically used one of those chairs as a crutch to get himself back up. So he basically, you know, just utilized that little thing to pick up the win in this match. So a good ending there, and not a bad last man standing match. I was expecting a little more from it though. Still a solid match. I would probably say, you know, 3 stars, 3 and 1 4 stars. The next matchup was Madison Rayne versus Gail Kim for the Knockouts title. This match wasn't as bad as what I was expecting it to be. Obviously, years ago, the Knockouts division was one of the hottest things in the company, and the Knockouts division now is basically a shell of its former self. It's still a tad bit better than the Divas division, but not that much. This match was actually pretty decent. I mean, they did some good stuff in here. You saw one spot in here that was pretty cool. They were battling on the top rope against the cage. Gail Kim hit a neck breaker off the top to Madison Rayne. Gail Kim then attempted to hit her finisher, Eat the Feet, off the top rope on the other side later on in the match to pick up the win. Madison Rayne basically got her off, slammed her. Her face basically hit the top ring rope. And then the end comes when Madison Rayne hits a spear off the top rope. So Madison Rayne retains the Knockouts title. Not a terrible, not that bad of a women's match. Obviously not as good as not as good as what, you know, the women's division should be, especially with a woman running the company. You would expect a woman running the company would have, you know, women go out there, bust their ass, and showcase they can that they can be as good as their male counterparts. But sadly, you don't get that in TNA. I'm a huge Gail Kim mark, and this was, you know, a solid women's match. Nothing a little better than I was expecting. I wouldn't say you necessarily need to see it, but it wasn't a bad women's match. About 2.5 stars. Then the next matchup was Samoa Joe versus Magnus for the TNA World Heavyweight title. Now, this was about getting close to 2 hours in the show, and I was like thinking, whoa, TNA has not done any idiotic booking. All their booking has actually made sense the whole entire night. And once you know it, that when I think that the ending of this match happens. Now, Magnus and Joe, obviously, you know, they were former tag team partners. They know each other very well. They have some good chemistry with each other. And this was going on to be a really good match. I was getting into it. I liked it a lot. But then you did the idiotic thing at the end, where you see a hand come out from the ring, pulls Joe under, and then it gets revealed that it was Abyss under there. So Abyss is basically Dixie's paid tool now, and he hits the Black Hole Slam. Abyss pretty much knocks out Samoa Joe, and then Magnus locks in the Kikita Clutch Joe submission move to basically have him pass out. So Joe basically passes out after help that Magnus got from Abyss there. Terrible, terrible ending right there. Just showcases that TNA can do some good booking. Then they do this in the world title match right here. And just showcases that they pretty much do the same old shit right here, especially with this type of ending. Match-wise, I would still give it probably about 2.5 stars, because it was a good match. It was a terrible ending, and just that took away from the match a lot. And it did take a little bit after that match for me to get back into the main event, even though I did enjoy the main event, and then the main event was Team Dixie versus Team MVP, basically for the control of TNA. Obviously, with Bobby Roode saying that he would get 10% ownership if he would win for Team Dixie. This power grab type of storyline has been done to death in wrestling companies. But as far as the match, it was a good match and a good main event. Didn't like the ending too much, but I liked the main event. Let me get into it. Started out with Austin Aries. The Team Dixie consisted of Austin Aries, Robbie, Jessie, Godderz, and Bobby Roode. Team MVP was M.V.P, the American Wolves of Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards, and Willow, a.k.a. Jeff Hardy. And those were the competitors in there. It started out with the first two being Austin Aries and MVP. Did not expect MVP to start the match. I was expecting someone else to start the match for his side, but it was actually MVP and Austin Aries at the beginning. They did some good stuff with each other. It was very slow and methodical, slow start of the match with them two. Then obviously Team Dixie, obviously in a War Game style match, the heels always get the advantage. So on Team Dixie, the next person that came out was Robbie E. Then it was Eddie Edwards with Team MVP. When Eddie Edwards got in there, he really picked up the match, did some great stuff there. Then Jessie Godderz came in there pretty much, with 3-on-2 right there with MVP and Eddie Edwards. Ganged up on MVP and Eddie Edwards. Then Davey Richards came out to pretty much even the odds. Then Bobby Roode was the last person to come out on Team Dixie. Then Willow, a.k.a. Jeff Hardy, was the final person to come out with Team MVP. Liked the way they had Willow come in there, Jeff Hardy. Liked the way they had him come in there. Had the lights go out and he was on top of the cage and dived on all the competitors that was on the side of Team Dixie. Great way to have him get into the match. Then the cage lowers. You didn't see that many crazy things in there. Obviously, you saw the heels pretty much have the advantage at first, especially when Dixie Carter came out there. Dixie Carter said earlier in the night she had an insurance policy to help her here, and she showcased that insurance policy is special guest referee Bully Ray. So Bully Ray comes out there, special guest referee. Looks like he's going to be on the side of Dixie Carter, and obviously he turns on Team Dixie at the end. But let me get into some of the stuff they did in the match. I liked what the Wolves did with the one thing with the trash can lid on Jessie Godderz, and they did, the double, Van Terminator type move with the drop kicks into the trash can. That was one of the biggest spots of the match. The crowd definitely liked that. The Wolves did great stuff in here. Even though I'm not the hugest fan of the Bromans, they did work pretty good as a tag team within here. MVP did some decent stuff, but he didn't do as much as I would expect. Obviously, Jeff Hardy, Willow, he did what he needed to do. He obviously hit the twist of fate and stuff. Obviously showcasing this, Jeff Hardy. Everyone knows it's Jeff Hardy. And the end of the match comes when Bully Ray and Bobby Roode basically have, a confrontation with each other. Bobby Roode talks down to Bully Ray. Bully Ray then slams Bobby Roode. Then MVP hits the Yakuza kick to pick the win up for his side, Team MVP. So Bully Ray turns on Dixie Carter here, and I guess he's now aligning himself with MVP. Good, solid main event. 3 1/4, 3.5 stars. But it is kind of bad and like old school TNA booking here, where they do what they've always done over the years. Basically, have to have an older guy to have the baby faces win the match. I mean, that did kind of send a bad signal right there with all the fresh faces that you're bringing into the company, that you had to have Bully Ray, old guy, come in there and have your side win, and then obviously MVP picking up the win for his side. So you kind of needed, an older guy in Bully Ray and, a former WWE guy and MVP to actually pick up the win. But other than my little gripe right there, it was a good main event, 3.5 stars. Overall, the event, just because not the main event, but the world title match just left a bad taste in my mouth. And, you didn't see anything excellent on the show, but you saw some good action. So overall, it wasn't a bad show. It was still, a solid show from TNA. I would still give it, about 6.5 out of 10. But obviously on this card, they did do certain things that showcase they haven't necessarily changed when it comes to booking, especially on this show. I think it's pretty obvious that we've already known for a little bit that Vince Russo has been back, but I think on this show it was finally showcased that yes, Vince Russo is working with the company. Like I said, wasn't a bad show, but just like a lot of TNA pay-per-views from the past, it was plagued by bad booking decisions. And that's it for my TNA Lockdown pay-per-view review. All right, peace.